Welcome and welcome back, everybody, to the OK Grognard Network. Today we're looking at TSR's The Strategic Review, Volume 1, Number 1. This is a pickup show, Periodicals Friday. A couple days behind, but we're catching up. And this is an interesting one because we've already looked at the first Dragon magazine to kick off the new network show on Periodicals Friday, which was a two-parter. So go back and check that out if you want. But, this is its predecessor. This is the Strategic Review. It was a newsletter put out by TSR, and if we check the chronological list site, I'll have links in the show notes for a lot of these things, like these websites, so you can check them out yourself when you get a chance. The Strategic Review number 1, Volume 1, number 1, came out in January of 1975. It was their first periodical as a company, as TSR. It was edited by Gary himself, and I think assistant edited by Brian Bloom. It came out after original D&D, but a couple months before the first supplement, Greyhawk, and there would go on to be 5 of these in Volume 1 in 1975, and then Volume 2 in 76 would include 2 more at the beginning of the year, even before Eldritch Wizardry, the 3rd supplement, came out. So there is a lot going on for very few people that were working there at the time. Owners themselves, obviously part of it, and a lot of outside help. Since Tim Kask was the first employee, and I think his first editing job might have been Blackmore, so he doesn't come in till the end of 75, which means a lot of this is going on before he even comes on board to edit supplements. And we'll go through more strategic reviews as we go, but we're going to take a hard look at the first one, as it was a house organ. The wonderful site, the Asayum, pronounced according to their FAQ in that way, their FAQ, lines up a lot of what was going on here for us in the Strategic Review. Spring 75 was the first issue. Remember these? They're showing that it was 76 before we see the next two, although D&D chronologically has number 4 and number 5. Number 4 and number 5 coming out in 1975. So there is some discrepancy there, and we'll address that when we get down to it in future episodes when we get up to those particular periodicals. But it's a good-looking bunch, right? It really does look like a hardcore newsletter for the first 4 issues. And there's 32 pages in this first one. So this is not a... I take that back. We'll get to that in just a minute. But the... well, let me double check that. Because I don't want to misquote it. There's 6 pages in the first one. And that first Dragon magazine gets up to 32 pages. So as they get bigger and bigger with these, and they start off at 50 cents and then go up to 75 cents and then go up to $1 with the last one, they are trying to give more and more value whenever they can. And let's also note that Dragon magazine, first issue, $1.50. So these are not expensive to own, but they had to be pretty costly to produce, especially the manpower. So there you go. There's a shot on the website of the first 7 issues. We're going to be looking at the first one. So, oh, and don't forget, after Dragon magazine begins, they turn the strategic review into the strategic preview. It becomes an in-house newsletter to keep everybody informed as the staff begins to grow up quite a bit. But let's what do we want to do here? I think we want to go let's get a look at the actual newsletter here. So, strategic review, military miniatures, games, swords, and sorcery. We have only just released the 3 booklets for D&D, and yet that's becoming a banner issue for the strategic review. And note some of the things going on here. Spring of 75, 50 cents, Volume 1, Number 1. What's going on here? Strategic Review is a newsletter of tactical study rules, which will quite naturally be used to carry advertisements for all of TSR's product line. However, it will do a lot more than that. Each issue will contain as many features and news items as we can possibly find space for. 6 pages for this one, right? If we receive submissions for future issues which deal with other things, we will certainly print them. For the newsletter, we'll try to cover as much as possible. Getting back to what is at hand, here is the format plan for each issue. Regular column, Strategist Club. Notice that's mentioned on the right-hand column here. And I want to point out, too, using 2 columns for a newsletter. The old Donald Featherstone newsletters, which ran from 62 to 80, were, they were just run through a typewriter, and they were single column for full pages and rather difficult to read. So just the innovation of making it a 2-column newsletter was a pretty smart move right there. Regular columns will include Strategist Club, creature features with a new Dungeons and Dragons monster, Castle and Crusades, the Armory, TSR News, and Wargaming World of News, and brief reviews. Material and space will dictate how much of each of the regular columns will be in any given issue, but we will always try to get the majority into each issue. Now, I don't want to read the entire thing. It does tell us that we'll have the solo dungeon adventures here toward the end, and that's an important thing. Look at that. They're selling Tractics, a coupon to get off on Tractics, which is pretty nice because they definitely want that, which will be reprinted by TSR in 1975 as well, after being a Guide on Games publication. That is the Tank Battles game. There's a little section in here with some updated stats from that game to some errata, actually. It's published quarterly. Note down here, editor Gary Gygax, assistant editor Brian Bloom. Tells you how you can get yourself a subscription to it, both in the U.S. and Canada. They don't talk about UK, although many of the War Games publications are coming across from the UK. This is interesting, too, as they know that Gen Con 8, 1975, will be coming up at the end of summer in August, and we're still in spring of 75, and they're introducing the Strategist Club. They're trying to get people on board to be members of a group that will have a party planned on Friday night at Gen Con. Remember, it's 3 days back then. And they're asking their members to list 6 different categories of favorites. Obviously, they're doing something here where they attempt to poll the public who are interested in TSR products. The best new game of 74. I wonder if they're fishing for some compliments on that. Outstanding designer, outstanding writer, outstanding wargaming magazine. Okay, well, will this be considered a magazine right out of the gate? It still really is a newsletter, but I think they think of newsletter and magazine as interchangeable nouns. Best miniature figure release series, and there are dozen plus different miniature companies now at this point. Favorite S&S novel, Sword and Sorcery novel of 1974. That's a interesting one to throw out there, since it kind of feeds into the whole D&D trend that they're pushing towards. And, I'm not faulting them for doing everything they can to get their company and their new product out in front of people's eyes. Remember, they've only printed the first 3 books. They're selling that first box set. They're trying to get as many sales as possible so that they can not only release some of these supplements they're working on, but also the Dungeon board game, to get Tractics printed and put out. And notice here they didn't say best war game. They say best new game of 1974. So that'll include D&D, but won't include Tractics, which was originally published in 71. So, they're kind of narrowing the focus there. Send your nominations as soon as possible. To join the Strategist Club, simply send us $1 along with your name and address. We'll do the rest. It's a special bonus to all members. We will allow a 25-cent additional discount on discount coupon purchases, so that if 4 per year were used, your membership fee has been returned in extra discounts. $1. Just $1 to join. Regular price of Tractics, $10. You can get 50% off. Get an additional quarter off, no matter which quarter you buy it in. But there it is. May 1st, 75 is when this expires. So if you're getting this in spring, you got to move. TSR News. Many readers are probably aware that Tactical Study Rule has acquired the rights to a number of rule booklets from God and Games line. These acquisitions are chainmail, hooray, Don't Give Up the Ship, excellent, and Tractics, of course, as we were talking about. Getting these booklets into print under our own logo is naturally of first concern to us, but that doesn't mean we'll totally ignore new releases. What we hope to do is this. Tractics should be available once again by the time this newsletter is released. It is a second printing with only minor revisions given here in the Armory column, so as to save the cost of doing a second edition. We will eventually revise and expand Tractics, but that must await an uncertain future date. Chainmail will be reprinted soon and in the third edition, with additions to the historic characteristics section to include the fighting men of the Far East, among others. Also added are sections to the man-at-arms, man-to-man rules, and some small items to the fantasy supplement. The additional material, coupled with current costs, will require that we raise the price. But that is unavoidable in today's economy. It is also hoped that we will be able to release at least one and possibly two companion booklets to Chainmail, one to deal with the Crusades and the other with mythical English medieval times. You guess which of the two possibilities we plan. So is it Arthurian or is it Robin Hood? I guess would be the two that they most likely are saying. Both will use the chainmail system with modifications to fit a particular case. Don't Give Up the Ship will be reprinted in its original form, and it is planned to quickly follow its release with two companion volumes, which will detail orders of battle for the fleets, major and minor navies of the world in that era, and give rules for conducting large-scale, long-term campaigns, spelling error, of an historic or fictional nature. The whole will possibly be boxed, although this is still not settled yet, for the cost might prove too high to make it attractive. Eventually, TSR hopes to add still more booklets in the Don't Give Up the Ship system, and as this develops, we will keep you informed. Dungeons & Dragons supplement booklets are still high on our priority list, and we should be getting at least one off sometime before Gen Con. If you will all rush large cash orders to us, we can guarantee that we'll take the copy to the printer for immediate preparation. Other irons in the fire include many more rules booklets, and a game or two. If you have a burning desire to see a particular set of rules in print, drop a card and let us know. The old business about squeaking wheels is sometimes true. So there you go. He's laying out the business plan for TSR, which will take them through probably most of the next year, through the end of strategic review, because I think we just have the supplement until eventually Dragon Magazine comes out. So a slim but useful Mind Flayer write-up in Creature Features is here. It's interesting that the first newsletter includes a creature that is a psionics creature, since that was not a super popular rule addendum subsystem, I guess is the best way to put it, to D&D. But there it is in all its glory. Magic user +1 to the saving throws, clerics +2. Helmet Telepathy adds +4 to the saving throws. When such saves are made, the attacking Mind Flayer is stunned for 3 turns. So there you go. There's the armory. It talks about some changes in tactics to a couple of different columns for range and penetration, for basically some errata, which is good. Wargaming World, the Hinchcliffe line of Martian figures last summer, the Fantastiques line of Der Kriegspielers, and the brand new Conan series prepared by Minifigs all point to a big boom in fantasy and swords and sorcery wargaming. Those of you who have formerly had to struggle along with numerous conversions will soon have almost everything you can imagine. So once those are out, I guess they'll stop doing miniatures, and I won't be collecting them for 50 years. But there you go. New magazine Europa, and that's over in Switzerland, which is a wargaming newsletter aimed at UK and European hobbyists. And because of the many languages spoken throughout the circulation area, Walter publishes in English. It is absolutely jammed full of information. Another new zine is Great Plains Game Players Newsletter, Communications Department, South Dakota. There you go. With its recent changes in format, Wargamers Digest has strengthened its bid to become the dominant publication in the miniatures aspect of our hobby. Gene McCoy involved in that. We suppose that Avalon Hill got tired of having to take it on the chin from SBI, so when the latter began to compete with Avalon Hill in the store market, Avalon Hill countered with its own line of direct mail games to compete with the vast array offered from SBI. It should be of benefit to all of us, for we can afford now to pick and choose among all the titles to find the very best. And last but not least, plans for Gen Con 8 are now underway. 1975, another 3-day event is planned for the late part of August. The exact date to be announced here. Can you imagine? It's early spring, and they have yet to set the date for Gen Con coming up that August. Pretty fast. It's coming up fast. What do we got? They talk about what's coming in the next issue, Cavaliers and Roundheads, Dungeons and Dragons questions, most frequently asked, pole arms, an article on pole arms, Castle and Crusade by Gary Gygax. That is a column that talks about, readers will harken back to a time when there was a Castle and Crusade Society originated by the Lake Geneva Tactical Studies Association and jointly sponsored by it and the now defunct IFW, International Federation of Wargaming. As the LGTSA was instrumental in preparing the final version of Chainmail, it is quite natural that your editor should discuss those rules in this column. And as he was the founder of the CNC Society, it is just as logical that this column on the medieval epic should be included in Strategic Review henceforth. Return with us now to those bygone days. He talks about the spear and man-to-man combat, javelin, spears, lance, pikes. Remember, next issue is going to be a whole thing on pole arms, one of Gary's favorite things to deal with. But he talks about the use of it in chainmail battles and how it works, and what sort of adjustments the referee will have to make when dealing with entire units full of spears that they may be setting against a charge. Melee table includes all category pole arms. This was done in the interest of space, for there are so many varieties of pole arms that it would be required far too much space to warrant their inclusion. More importantly, how many war game figures have you seen which are equipped with partisan, Volgas, and the like? However, there might be the possibility of these arms being shown in future. You know, a lot of people would just take basically metal lengths about the thickness of paper clips, or even unbend a paper clip and straighten them out and make their own pole arms if they had spear users. And of course, many of the figures from the ancients would be using those as well. The entire rest of this, starting on page 3, includes a lot of these rules for special first issue features, solo dungeon adventures. Now, these would eventually find their way into the Although it has been possible for enthusiasts to play solo games of Dungeons & Dragons by means of wilderness adventures, there has been no uniform method of dungeon exploring, for the campaign referee has heretofore been required to design dungeon levels. So they talk about using the outdoor survival map and the tables within the wilderness, the third booklet from Dungeons and Dragons, and the tables there to just move around and explore on the map and do solo or self-refereed, I suppose. If you've got a group and you want to all explore out in the wilderness, you could use those tables to do that. So now he's introducing some solo rules for doing a dungeon. And of course, much of this, and I'm not sure if it's exactly a one-to-one, but much of this is in the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide. So check that out. It really is something. And it's also worth noting that all of these tables take up a great deal of space. We're up through page 5, so basically part of 3, 4, and 5 out of 6 pages take up that. And of course, a nice little, with some spear users on the miniatures there. At the end, they talk about mapping it out. This is discussing what's coming up and also asking for people's input. Note how much of this is geared toward war games. Sure, they want fantasy, swords and sorcery. What are your topics to be covered, and what periods would you like covered within the strategic review? But let's face it, there are a lot of other companies that have all sorts of rules for various periods. Now, of course, they have English civil rule rules in Cavaliers and Roundheads, and they've got Napoleonic rules in Tricolor, and they have chainmail rules for medieval rules and tactics for armor, Panzer warfare there. And these are things that they sell through TSR, and many of them are written at least in part by Gary or someone connected or who would become connected to TSR. But they're looking to do a lot more with strategic review, at least early on. From the above list, they can do the following kinds of articles: rules addition, rules variants, rules expansions. All of these things are the kinds of things you see in wargaming newsletters of the time. And we'll take a look at some of that. And they just fold it up, tri-fold it, pop a stamp on it, put your address on it, and send it off to you, whatever condition it gets to you in. Hopefully your postal carriers are kind and don't tear it up on its way there, because that would make it a mess. The one more thing I wanted to discuss was something I will also put into a link, which is this Wargamer newsletter site, which is an archive of many of the issues of Wargamer's newsletter, which was from Donald Featherstone over in the UK from 62 to 80. There's an entire set of issues. Remember, it starts in April 1962 with its first issue. Now, it doesn't have copies of all of those, but if you'll note, a lot of these are links to scanned copies, and it goes pretty far down. Notice all of that. And just to have a look, in January of 74, for example, tons of ads, tons of miniatures letting you know 10p for an eagle. There you go. ME, Middle Earth, right? You got a mounted wizard, a man-orc with axe, mounted hobbits, So Miniature Figurines Limited is doing some fantasy stuff, but, they've also got English Civil War, and they've got Vikings and Ancients and all sorts of other things. Wargamers Newsletter, 142, January 1974. So this would have been arriving in people's boxes as they were just beginning to get into Dungeons and Dragons. And obviously, this is a scan. It's not a perfect copy, and it would have been a lot crisper, but it would have been run through a photostatic copier after being typed up. And note, like I said, a lot of these newsletters, single column, difficult to read, but they slip their ads in this way. They get information. Bill Abrams does an article in this one. A.J. Mitchell, a number of others. The link will be in the show notes, so you can go and check out some of those. And as time goes by with this Periodicals Friday show, we'll cherry pick some of these. Obviously, there's way too much to go over, and we really want to try to relate it to TSR. So we'll probably be looking at later issues when some of TSR's lines, including Dungeons and Dragons, start to be featured even in this, because this lasts through January of 1980. So they get 5-6 years of knowing that D&D was out there and that it was becoming more and more popular. Obviously, the miniatures companies are starting to make more fantasy figures. It's a trend, and it's not an accident. So, I guess we're done for today. We'll say thank you, everybody who's checking this out. It's very much appreciated. This has been TSR's The Strategic Review, Volume 1, Number 1, retrospective on a Periodicals Friday episode of the OK Grognard Network. Don't forget, shows are recorded on Twitch most Sundays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Then they're uploaded to YouTube for convenient streaming. Thank you to everybody who watches and supports the efforts, and please do back the channel even at the free level on patreon.com. Join such illustrious Patreon supporters as these other great people. Very much thank you for everything you do for me. The OK Grognard Network includes at least 3 basic shows here, including this Periodicals Friday show, the OS Watch, the Old School Watch on Wednesday, and Guidelines on Sundays, which are rules, booklets. And that's pretty much it. We will catch you in the next one. Thanks very much. Do share this, and that'll be appreciated. Take care now. Bye-bye.